What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2022 team-by-team predictions. The South Carolina Gamecocks are up next. Here are some of the predictions for South Carolina. You see the FPI has them at 5.9 and 6.1, so right at 6-6. Athlon has this team at 6-6, and the over-under is at 6. So that tells you that expectations are for a 6-6 season for South Carolina. You talk to South Carolina fans, and I think their expectations are much higher than 6-6. And they've got a lot going for them. You know, they finished last year really strong. You bring in Spencer Rattler at quarterback, a big-time upgrade there to that position. I think some people, because he got benched for Caleb Williams last year, they think that he's no good or whatever. Spencer Rattler has the potential to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I mean, he's got that kind of talent, and he wasn't bad at Oklahoma. The team was struggling. Caleb Williams is a special player as well, and you know he kind of came in there and gave him a spark. But it's not like Spencer Rattler was the problem with Oklahoma last year. He played pretty well when he was in there. So I think there's a misconception there. I think this team has a lot of experience back on the offensive line, so that's going to help them out. Run game should be pretty good. Who's he going to throw to? You know, you got Jaheim Bell and you got Josh Vann, a couple of big targets there, but maybe need to develop some more targets. And that's kind of the story for South Carolina. It's the depth. Their starters are pretty good, kind of like Florida. We talked about Florida, how their starters are pretty good, but they don't have a ton of depth. South Carolina is kind of in that same category, a defensive side of the ball as well. Can they go toe-to-toe with a team like Georgia for 4 quarters? That's the big question. And I think we'll find out, of course, here in just a few weeks. But let's get to the schedule. They will open up with Georgia State. Georgia State is a pretty good Group of 5 team. I don't think this is a game you can just show up and win. South Carolina going to have to play pretty well in this game. I think Georgia State probably keeps it close for a little while. First game of the year. You got the jitters. South Carolina maybe starts a little bit slow, but I think they will pull away. Not a game that comes down to the fourth quarter, but not a blowout either. I'm going to say that South Carolina will win this game to start off the season and get to 1-0. Next game is on the road at Arkansas. This is going to be a really good matchup here. The winner of this game could have a pretty good season, I think. Arkansas may be a little bit overrated. If you think that this is a team that's going to be maybe a top 10 team, I don't know if they're going to be that good this year, but they will be good. It is on the road. I think Arkansas a little bit better than South Carolina, plus they're playing at home. That's enough for me to go with the Razorbacks. So I think South Carolina loses that game. They then move on to face Georgia the next week. This is going to be a good game. I think some people are just kind of writing this off, counting it as a win for Georgia, an easy win. I don't think so. I think South Carolina will be ready for this one. Huge game, playing at home. Again, they've got the quarterback in Spencer Rattler to go toe-to-toe with this Georgia team. It's kind of what I talked about earlier, though. Can the depth keep up with Georgia for 4 quarters? And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think South Carolina plays really well for about 3 quarters, but then Georgia kind of finds a way to get a little bit of separation there in the fourth quarter, and I'm going to go with the Bulldogs. But I think South Carolina makes it a game. I think it will be a good one. Don't be surprised at all if this is a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Georgia, and that's going to put South Carolina at 1-2. They've got a tough schedule here to start with Arkansas and Georgia to open up SEC play there in week 2 and week 3. That is a pretty tough start, but then they get a bit of a break with Charlotte and South Carolina State. I think they win both of those games, and they will improve then to 3-2. Next game is on the road at Kentucky. Going to be a tough one here for South Carolina. Kentucky, a quality team. I mean, these teams are pretty even, really, when you look at them. Kentucky has been a little bit more consistent. Interesting quarterback battle with Will Levis and Spencer Rattler, 2 guys that, of course, transferred in there. And both guys, I think, have a lot of potential. Again, this will be a good game, but it's kind of a coin flip type game for me. And usually when that's the case, I'm going to go with the home field advantage. So I'm going to pick Kentucky here, and Carolina then goes to 3-3. Up next is Texas A&M. They get a bye week before playing Texas A&M. That's going to be big. And this is a Texas A&M team that I think is being overrated coming into this year. I think South Carolina has one big win this season, and I think this is it. I'm going to pick them to beat Texas A&M. They're playing at home. They've already been battle tested with Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky. Get back home. Huge game. Crowd gets into it. They have a bye week to prepare. A lot of things here going for in the favor of the Gamecocks. So I'm going to say they pull off the upset and they beat Texas A&M. They bounce back the next week with Missouri. Maybe a bit of a hangover, a slow start, a game that's close for a while. But I think Carolina is able to pull away. Just not that high on Missouri this year. And so I'm going to put them at 5-3. And then it's Vanderbilt after that. I don't really see them struggling much here, even on the road. I'm going to go with the Gamecocks, so they get to 6-3. That's probably going to be enough to probably put them in the top 25. I think maybe even after just beating Missouri. If you're sitting there at 5-3 and you got to win over Texas A&M, and all three of your losses are the top 25 teams. But I think if not, then you maybe get to the top 25 here at 6-3. But then you have to play Florida on the road in the Swamp. Revenge game for the Gators. Very similar teams in my opinion. I think, like I mentioned before, the starting lineups for these two teams are very solid. Depth maybe not quite as there to compare to a Georgia, but very similar matchup. And kind of like with the Kentucky game, it comes down to a coin flip for me. That means home field advantage is the difference. I'm going to say Florida wins this game. And they've got, several of their 50-50 type games are on the road. Arkansas, Kentucky, and Florida. Those are three games that you wish you could have at home. You might just want to go ahead and play Georgia on the road if you're not going to win that game anyways. So the schedule isn't great for South Carolina, but they do get Tennessee at home on November 19th. This will be a good one here. Interesting matchup. Tennessee's going to look to go fast, going to look to try to score a lot of points. South Carolina maybe not quite as up-tempo, maybe more of a slow the game down here. Playing at home, run the football, play good defense. I'm going to pick South Carolina. I think they get another big win. So really, Texas A&M and Tennessee, those will be the two big wins for South Carolina this year. Of course, hard to say for sure where Tennessee would be at that point. I think they're a top 25 team. Some people think they're the second best team in the East, but then you have others that think maybe they're being overrated. I think that East is wide open after Georgia, though. I think South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, really all four of those teams have a chance. And no, I'm not writing off Florida. I think Florida is in that conversation. So that's going to be a really interesting battle there in that division for number 2. No, I don't think any of those teams are going to take down Georgia this year, but they will finish things up here with Clemson on the road. Rivalry game. Clemson, after South Carolina kind of owned this rivalry for so long, now Clemson is owning it. Clemson, I think, is going to bounce back from where they were last year. I don't know that they're at that top tier like a Georgia or Alabama anymore, or at least not this year. The game's on the road, though, and it's tough. It's tough, I think, for South. It's going to be tough for them to go in there and win this game. I do think they put up a good fight. It is a close game this year, but I've got to pick Clemson at home, and I think that puts South Carolina at 7-5. So that's my prediction. Apparently, I'm optimistic. I know Carolina fans are thinking 7-5. We're better than that. But again, you go back to those predictions at the beginning of the video, they've all got them at 6-6. So I'm a little bit higher than South Carolina than those predictions. But I don't know. It's going to be tough for them to do much better than 7-5. And you could see them losing to Texas A&M or losing to Tennessee and even going 6-6. It wouldn't be that big of a surprise. But I think they find some big wins in there against Texas A&M and against Tennessee. And maybe they lose one of those games, but they beat Kentucky or they beat Arkansas. But however it shakes out, I'm going to say that South Carolina will go 7-5 in 2022.